Hi. Hello. There hasn't been a video in a hot second, so this video makes up for the video on January 18th that didn't get filmed, and the next video will explain why it didn't get filmed. Long story short, I have a kidney infection, and I was in the ER, and I really just didn't have a chance to film. So, here we are. Here's the video. So this video is going to be talking about why I'm an atheist. I get a lot of questions about this, and there's really no just like one word answer or one sentence answer. There's a million different reasons for this, quite honestly. I'm just gonna kind of go over the basics in this video, and maybe I'll make more videos on this topic because I have a lot to say. As I do with most things, I just have lots and lots of opinions. So, don't judge my appearance. I know I look like shit. Actually, I don't look half bad for someone with a kidney infection who hasn't moved in several days. That's not really the point, though. Don't judge my appearance because beauty is in the eye. I can't speak. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or whatever the fuck. Alright. So, basically, the first thing I'd like to say is that I cannot for 100% certain prove and say that there's no God. But you cannot for 100% certain prove that there is one. So, we're kind of at a loss there. I'm not saying that I know there is no God. If anyone has ever talked about the Richard Dawkins, like level of belief, I don't think that's what it's called, but it's like the scale of atheism, pretty much, or like the scale in believing. I'm not going to say that I 100% believe that there is no God. But I do think that I'm more inclined to say that there isn't one. I call myself an atheist because I simply don't really think that it's likely. If I had to stake my life on it, for sure, one way or the other, I'd probably say that there isn't one. If someone held a gun to my head and said, you gotta get this right, or you're gonna die, I'd probably say that there isn't one. So yeah. And the following reason why is because, first off, any religious text, and we can argue about this day and night, any religious text, I don't feel there is enough substantial evidence behind. I personally don't think that any religious text has true evidence. It's really just a bunch of rules and a bunch of stories. And you can sit here and say, oh, well, this place is where it happened. With what evidence? You can sit here and say that this happened or that happened. In fact, with certain religious texts, I would argue that there's evidence against it. Like the whole thing with like Noah's flood in the Bible. I can almost say without a assurance of a doubt that science does not have any evidence to conclude that that actually happened. The whole Noah's Ark story, I can almost 100% certain, and almost because I can't be 100% certain about anything, I can almost 100% certain say that it didn't happen, as of now, because science as of now cannot prove that. That may change, because that's the thing about science. Science changes based on evidence. Historical texts, for the most part, like the Bible, have never changed. Just the way that they are perceived has. So, just your perception of whatever is being written down, just whatever you think it means changes. Notice that throughout time, and that's another point I will come to. How can you expect me to subscribe to a certain religion when people within that religion can't even agree on what the religion means or what it means to be whatever religion, Like, a good example of this is someone will tell me, oh, well, it's not very Christian-like to be gay, but then another Christian will tell me, oh, well, it's not very Christian-like to discriminate against people. Clearly, one of you is fucking wrong. And that really is just based on your belief of the Bible. It's really just based on your interpretation of text. So, both of you can be considered right. Because that's like saying, if I take a piece of literature and I think that the subtext means this, my perception is that the poem means this, but your perception is this. Unless the author explicitly tells us what they were trying to convey, both of you could be considered right, because at that point it's more opinion than fact. And so that's the other thing. If I ever were to believe in a God, I think I could believe in a God per se, but not really subscribe to a certain religion. Because to me, the idea of subscribing to a certain religion really just means that I've either been brainwashed into it or I've grown up with it, so it's kind of an indoctrination situation. Um, and maybe I'm wrong about that, because I know there are plenty of people who they start off in one religion or they're raised in a certain faith and then they, convert to another faith. And listen, I'm not here to tell you that I have anything against you if you believe in a God or you subscribe to a certain religion. I personally don't think any less of someone if they're Christian or Muslim or any other faith. Um, I honestly, I don't really care what you do with your lives as far as what you believe. The part that starts to bother me is when you start to think less upon other people because of your belief, or you start to want to discriminate against others because of your belief. Then it starts to become an issue for me, because then you start to infringe upon my rights and the rights of other people. Then there's a problem. I 100% think that freedom of religion is something that should be exercised all the way, 100%. But the whole discrimination thing, just because I think you should have the freedom to practice your religion, doesn't mean I necessarily have to like what it is that you're practicing. And that's the other thing. It's less about the religion in question and more about the way of the person. It's more about the religious person in question rather than the religion. Because like I said, if you took 10 Christians, for example, I keep using that as an example, but if you took 10 Christians and you put them all in a room, I will show you 10 different Christianities, because I can guarantee that not all of them have the same views in regards to Christianity about the same things. And you know what? Maybe they'll have similar views, especially if they come from the same church or the same congregation or the same form of Christianity, but but they're still going to differ. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to believe the exact same things. They're still going to differ within an opinion about their own community. And you could say that about any community or any school of thought, because really every community has differing views, but this is something that's pretty big. They're talking about someone like in the sky, I guess, who's, a conscience, like a sentient being who has created everything and is making active decisions or has a plan or something of that nature. And so it takes it one step further in my mind. And so I'm not going to sit here and say that I think every Christian is terrible or anything. Definitely not. I have plenty of Christian friends. There's plenty of people that I think that are Christians that I think are just lovely. But it's really less about Christianity and more about how the person perceives Christianity is the honest truth. Or any religion, like I said, like Judaism, it's really less about the person and more about the way they perceive the text, or they perceive what the rules say in their religion. And so that's the other thing. A lot of religions nowadays say, oh, we're not just a text and we're not just a set of rules, or we're not just a practice, we're a relationship. I hear that a lot. I hear people say, I have a personal relationship with God. And you know what? If that makes you feel better, if that helps you in your life and it doesn't hurt anyone, fine. Have a relationship with God all you want. That's great. If it's something that helps you and doesn't hurt anyone else, I have zero problem with that. It doesn't necessarily think that I think that you have an actual relationship with God. And the reason I say that is because if I am walking alone in a forest and I start to hear voices, and then I say, that's the voice of God, does it mean that that's actually the voice of God because I believe it is? Because the way you perceive something doesn't create reality. Just because I think that I hear the voice of God doesn't mean it really is the voice of God. Or just as an example, if I'm walking alone in the forest and I hear voices, and I hear a voice in my head, but I think it's, someone else in the forest I just can't see them because it's dark or something, but there's someone else there. And then it turns out that there was really no one there and that it was all in my head. Just because I think that someone was there doesn't mean that they were magically created into existence, doesn't mean that there's actually someone there. And so you can believe in it all you want, but it doesn't make me think that it's actually true simply because you believe in it. And you could say that about anyone. If someone who had a severe mental illness came to you and said, I'm hearing voices, you wouldn't right off the bat believe them. You'd say, oh, okay, well, I think we should get you help. I think that we should help you out in some way. You would try to logically rationalize that. But why is it that as soon as someone says, I feel like I have a personal relationship with someone that I can't prove actually exists, all of a sudden we give weight to that claim? I don't know. I just don't buy it. That's just my main point. And listen, again, this is not to offend anyone of any faith. I truly believe that you can believe anything you want, and I will respect you for your belief, but I want the same in return. And so I don't necessarily like to think of myself as like this super angry, bitter atheist. If I had to classify myself, I'd probably say an agnostic atheist, more of a secular humanist type of person. However, that's shifty. I also feel as though there's a lot of misconceptions about atheists just in general. And I want everyone who watches this video, if anyone watches this video at all, because it probably won't be watched, I want anyone who watches this to know that my views as an atheist do not represent the whole collective as atheist people. Like I said, one person who is a Christian or a Muslim or of any faith, their views about the faith doesn't represent everybody who subscribes to that faith. It doesn't represent the collective. And that goes for everything, including atheism. Just because I'm an atheist and I feel this way doesn't mean every atheist is going to feel that way. In fact, there are atheists who certainly do claim certain beliefs that I guess you could say couldn't be proven. An example of this, I am somewhat paganistic, for sure. I've definitely had my fair share of partaking in Wicca specifically. I would consider myself a bit of a Wiccan, and not necessarily in belief anymore. I used to be a hardcore, strong believer in Wicca, but I was always an atheist. I never believed in God, but I did believe a lot of things about Wicca. Now I would say that that's more through tradition to me. There are certain things that I could make a whole separate video on how I'm both Wiccan and an atheist, but there's certain things that I definitely somewhat have a belief in when it comes to Wicca. And now any atheist watching is going to be like, what the fuck? Then be like, you traitor? You're not really one of us. But for sure, I definitely have some paganistic beliefs. And I would consider myself a Wiccan. Just recently, in the last year or so, I haven't really been much of a practicing Wiccan. Because my belief in it is starting to dwindle more and more. So at the moment, I still consider myself a Wiccan, but that sure as hell could change. That's for certain. It's definitely, what you believe can fluctuate throughout your lifetime, that's for sure. And, yeah. As far as things like an afterlife go, I also don't believe in an afterlife, which I'll make a whole separate video about. I feel like I always say that in every video I make. I'm always like, I'll make a separate video just for this. Who knows if I ever really will, but I plan on it. So, yeah. To wrap this up, that is just some of my thoughts on atheism and why I'm an atheist. As far as God goes, again, I cannot prove for 100% certain that there is no God. But I also can't prove for 100% certain that there is no flying unicorn on the dark side of the moon. I also can't prove that. But that doesn't mean that it's likely to be true. So, yeah. I'm not 100% certain that there is or isn't a God, nobody is, and anyone who says that they are, I wouldn't trust them, because I don't know about that, you know? And you know what? If you are 100% certain that there is a God, or that there isn't one, good for you. I'm not here to judge you. Whatever has made your life go better, you know, whatever works for you is great. But that's the other thing, you know, sometimes when you listen to people talk about God and their thoughts on it, it sounds a lot less like what is actually factual and a lot more like whatever fits their lifestyle and whatever they like, you know. People will come up with ideas about God and the afterlife and just things of that nature. And when they come up with those ideas, it sounds a lot less like it's based on fact and a lot more of like what they want it to be. So, um, that's just some thoughts. I hope I didn't offend anyone. If I did, feel free to have a constructive discussion with me in the comments. So that's all I have to say for now. Have a wonderful day, and I'm going to be making a lot of videos today because I got to catch up, because making a video every day of 2021. Anyway, have a nice day, and believe whatever you want. Don't let people judge you for your belief, and just as long as it doesn't hurt other people, do what you will. Goodbye.